A legislative committee meeting last week prompted Human Services Director Sydney Squire to walk out. After 3 hours of questioning, at issue are allegations of fraud by providers of mental health services. They are crying foul over a halt in their funding by Squire's department before those charges are proven. Now, several warn they will have to close this month without those funds, and 8 are already suing the state to stop the cuts. Squire did not attend another meeting this week in Roswell. Her spokesman said she had been mistreated by legislators and nothing would be gained by another meeting. So, what's next in this evolving story, and what is the impact on providers and their clients especially? That's where we begin this week. From the New Mexico Watchdog website, line regular Rob Nikolewski is here. Attorney and one-time chairman of the State Democratic Party, our friend Jon Wertheim, is back. The CEO of the New Mexico Green Chamber of Commerce and a panel regular, Laura Sanchez, is here, and returning to the table, former state senator and executive director of the Albuquerque Medical Association, Diane Snyder. Diane, let me start with you. You've been a state senator. You've been around healthcare, a long time in healthcare in this realm. What is your take on how this played out with the secretary? A couple different angles here. Were the legislators right or wrong here in prompting what Mr. Kennicott, the spokesperson for Ms. Squire, says was rude treatment? Is that the issue here, or was they right to call her on the carpet at this point to get some answers about what's going on here?
Gene, I think the biggest problem is that the secretary was actually doing her job. She heard there was allegations of fraud. She had an external audit done. She turned over the findings to the Attorney General. Well, once it went to the Attorney General, she has legal restrictions on what she can share. And there are attorneys on this committee that should know that. One of the things I have seen over the years, and just so you know, not only was I a legislator, I started lobbying in 1983, so I've been around a while. And I know sometimes legislators, and I myself included, when you're so passionate about a subject and you become a little more direct and a little more intense. We have seen it over the years. We particularly saw it in a confirmation hearing during the session. I think that
what we haven't seen, Diane, is a cabinet secretary leave a meeting.
When you
is that appropriate? Isn't that part of the gig to sit there and take it literally and answer all questions until those questions are exhausted?
If they were asking different questions, yes. But about the 10th time you've heard the same question and the answer is the same, it's not going to change.
Sure.
Then it becomes that you're beating up on the person.
Okay, fair enough. Another question on that. Was there another way to handle this? You mentioned there was a hop.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to turn to Jon on this one as well, because in between giving the information to the State Attorney General's office, there were accusations. And those accusations have put these providers back on their heels in a corner, Jon, where they don't have the ability to speak for themselves or defend themselves at this point. I understand it's not a court of law. I don't understand it's not due process, literally. But was there another way to do this, Jon, in your opinion?
Well, actually, there is due process for government contracts. Interestingly enough, people don't realize that a lot of times. I think it's a huge problem. I mean, because not that we want to root out fraud. There's no doubt about that. I'm a government fraud lawyer. I prosecute cases like that on behalf of plaintiffs. And I'm a member of Taxpayers Against Fraud. But what happened here is the allegations against very local providers, people who've been in business like in Roswell for 27 years. These are people who have filed lawsuits saying, look, I'm being labeled a criminal and a liar, and I've been in business for 27 years and always had a clean audit. I think there's a backstory here. This so-called audit was done by the Public Consulting Group, which is run by Bill Mazakowski, who's a huge Republican financial backer, most recently of Scott Brown in Massachusetts. He's known as the maven of privatization, was labeled that by the Boston Globe. And the bottom line is this is just part of the Martinez administration trying to privatize government in New Mexico. And we darn sure should have a debate before that happens. The Public Consulting Group is known for privatizing healthcare services. I think that's what's trying to be done. And they're basically trying to destroy the current system. I mean, the secretary admitted that the system had been destroyed, the behavioral health system in New Mexico. That is very serious. And she should be able to sustain real questions about what she admits in a public setting is a system that's destroyed. It's very serious.
If there are allegations, Laura Sanchez, good to see you again, always glad when you're here. Is there a way, I have to say again, to backtrack and think, why not go to the Attorney General quietly and say, we have some suspicions about some of these folks. Why do you have to go publicly with a huge broad brush and just cut the funding off and risk a lot of health issues for a lot of innocent victims out there? Why couldn't that approach have been taken, and would that have been the better way to go here?
Well, that would have been one approach to go, obviously. I think there's a lot of actors here that could have conducted themselves differently. I think both, there's obviously a very tense committee hearing at play here, but those of us who have been around the roundhouse and have had to sit in the hot seat answering questions from senators and others, I mean, that's just a part of that job. You have to withstand the heat that comes with it. I mean, the senator mentioned Secretary Hannah Skandera recently. She underwent days and days worth of these kinds of very intense and in some ways much more personal questions about during her confirmation process, and she never once walked out. To her credit, she withstood those questions.
Some of those quite personal.
Very personal, and about her competence and a lot of allegations, very different from the situation that occurred last week. And I think, I think it's unheard of and a real problem for the administration for a secretary to walk out and to sort of show that kind of disrespect to the legislature. I mean, it's really troubling, and I think
let me ask you this:
partisan issue.
Style points aside, and we can forgive her for that, and there's time to make up for that, certainly. But the bigger question is this idea of flushing out owners of businesses and replacing ownership in order for money to come back, and then also having outside contractors from another state come in, as Ms. Squire has said she would like to do. Something seems kind of squishy there on that.
Well, it's a real problem, especially when, I know for a fact this administration, along with certain legislators, have worked to try to make sure we tighten up the in-state preference for businesses and for contractors. That's a law that's really important in terms of implementation. Taxation revenue now, has a whole process for making sure that local businesses are paying their taxes and are actual local businesses. Then to have the situation where there's so much out-of-state involvement, and my understanding, I spoke to a couple legislators. I wasn't there on the day of the hearing, but I did speak to a couple legislators who were there. And one of the issues that they had serious concerns about was that particular audit company that audited these programs, their pay structure was based on how many infractions they found.
Oh, wow.
Which is a very different kind of an audit process than you see normally. Normally there's an audit, there's auditors, they audit a process, whatever they come up with. There's a fee attached, but it isn't by infraction. There was apparently some concern that there was a different method for the type of deliverables on that project.
Sure.
And those were some of the questions that legislators had. I think that, the legislature is obligated. I think legislators have to represent their constituents and have to ask these tough questions, both on the side of the folks who are providers and on the side of people who are receiving these services. I mean, this is a really important issue, and I don't think it's a partisan issue. I think this is one where the governor has to have control over, and she does, for the most part. This is, like I said, unprecedented, because there's a lot of other secretaries that have been able to withstand some serious questions. And I think she has to have control over her staff, or over her secretaries and her cabinet, and be able to show the respect that's necessary.
Go ahead, Diane. My fault. Go ahead.
Should a citizen of New Mexico who goes before an elected body not also deserve the right to be treated respectfully?
Absolutely, everybody should be treated respectfully.
And the contention is from the secretary is that did not happen. I was not there. I'd been there earlier in the day at that committee, and I left before that. But I have seen that happen time after time after time. Not only when I was a senator, but for many years coming before and after.
I think it happens all the time, but I think this is what you have to remember when you're in the hot seat. We've all been there. I've been in the hot seat on climate issues, getting the Riot Act read against me and my organizations and my affiliations. And it's a tough position to be in.
Absolutely.
But basically, you walk out and it's not personal.
That's right. She'll be back in front of these committees. There's no question. So we can turn a page on that, I think, at some point soon, Rob Nikolewski, because again, this issue about who gets served, and underneath all of this discussion is the fact that we rank 51st, including the District of Columbia, in what we spend for behavioral health services of this type in this country. We are at a very vulnerable position, and I have to think, if 48 hours goes by and some of these folks are not being served, we're talking about a public safety issue at some point.
Well, but then this is so multi-layered.
Please.
I mean, even people on the left, right, they agreed that the behavioral services administration in the state is a mess.
Sure.
So that almost begs the question, let's have an audit. And the audit did come back with some disturbing findings. The companies are defending themselves.
We're being told they're fraud. There's been a judge and jury on this out already. We're being told that across the board, there's $36 million in fraud. No one's proved anything yet. I don't get how someone can come right out and say those kind of things.
Well,
without
the
a day
Attorney
in court,
General's
literally.
office will look into it, but the politics is layered over this as well, because the
There you go.
Attorney General is going to be running against the governor next year.
Right.
I mean, this thing is, again, it's so multi-layered. I mean,
Right.
and on the one hand, you could, I don't know where the truth lies
Right.
in this thing.
What can
but
Ms.
but you
Squire-
can look at it on the one hand and say, well, this audit did come up with, did show some
Sure.
misdeeds,
Sure.
and but on the other hand, previous audits and the people from Optum didn't show anything previously, so I don't know where all this lies. And
Right.
and John brings up the point about the auditing group out of Boston that may, as far as I know, I don't know for sure, may have Republican connections, but there's also a number of these companies here in New Mexico that have donated to Democratic candidates. So again, I don't know where where the truth lies. I think ultimately, what the Attorney General says might have some weight in this. But
And that's
again,
where it sits
but again,
now,
if it comes
absolutely.
back and it goes against the administration, they're going to come back and say, well, this is Gary King running
That's a good
against
point.
the
That's a
running
good
against the
point. And
governor.
I think that's where we're going to leave it right there. That's an interesting point, isn't it? Where, no one's going to really cleanly win here, are they? It's really going to be a mess all the way down the line. Now, in a moment, we're back to get our panelists' point of view on education spending here in New Mexico. Do rankings mean New Mexico should increase money to our schools?